This is Jim Humphrey with Imminent Threat Defense Firearms Training. Let's take apart the Traditions E-Bolt muzzle-loading rifle today. This Traditions E-Bolt is a muzzle-loading rifle and has some unusual disassembly procedures. First, of course, I'm going to check and double-check that it is unloaded. In the case of this muzzle loader, make sure there's no cap on the breech plug. There's two bolts to remove the stock. One's a hex, metric hex, and one's a flat screw. So removing those allows you to remove the stock from the receiver. I'm going to push up on the base of the trigger and separate it, set the stock aside. We don't need it for now. To get the bolt out, I'm going to pull it back. I have to pull the trigger back, and that will release the sear, which allows the bolt to be removed. I can remove the trigger group. It's not really necessary for normal cleaning, but does give you access to it. They call this a adjustable trigger, not really adjustable. They have Loctited all the adjustment screws down. The mounting screws have a little washer on them. I'm going to be careful to retain that little washer. The manufacturer really discourages any further disassembly of this trigger group for obvious legal reasons. So let's have a look at the bolt group components. There's a bolt head and what has a locking screw. There's a mainspring. There's the striker, the bolt, and the decapping tool. The striker screws into the bolt head, and it's important to re-engage it to about the same depth when I put it back together again, so take careful note of it. It's the bolt head's held by that locking screw, so I have to remove the locking screw in order to unscrew the striker. The striker unscrews from the breech face end. The gun comes with this decapping tool, and I didn't find it to be very well made, and it doesn't engage the end of the striker very well. I found it slipped very easily. I couldn't get a very good grip on it to apply much leverage. This particular striker was rusted in place when I got this gun to fix it, so I took the time to build a special tool. I went to Harbor Freight, got a cheap screwdriver, ground it down to fit, so I got a nice exact fit into that striker face. And I had a lot of leverage with that screwdriver to do the job right without messing up the parts. Once the striker has been loosened, I can use that decapping tool to unscrew it, or just unscrew it by hand as it gets out further. It's spring loaded. The further out it gets, the easier it is to turn. With the striker unscrewed, pull it out and remove the mainspring. And I can see on the end of the striker there's been a groove cut through around the threads there. That's where the locking screw engages. Keeps the striker from unscrewing during operation. Reassembly is pretty straightforward. Put the mainspring back on the striker, screw it back into the bolt head, get it right down to the correct depth. The striker that is inside the bolt. The manual says about a 1/16 of an inch under flush. The decapping tool works well enough when everything's oil lip and cleaned. I can reset that depth to where I found it. That's why I took careful note of it. Or it can be adjusted. The manual says if you're not getting good primer strikes, turn it about a quarter turn at a time and get the adjustment right. I moved the bolt head over to the side before I tightened it down. That's where I found it when I came out of the gun. So that'll make it reassembly easier. And you can see if I push down, I can get the striker to go back up inside the bolt a little bit. Very, very heavy spring. The breech plug is removed with this special breech plug removal tool. It's a pretty straightforward removal process. Of course, being a black powder gun, this breech plug requires a lot of cleaning, especially after every use. There is a little cap spring in here. I removed it for cleaning once. It's not really necessary. It's pretty difficult. Easy enough to clean without removing it. Reassembly is pretty straightforward. Just put everything back where I found it. These hex drivers are all metric. It was a 5mm for the stock, 3 I think for the trigger group, and a 2mm for the locking screw on the bolt head. I'm going to put the bolt back in. I'll hold the trigger back to get the bolt past the sear, and then I'll hold the trigger back. When I bring the bolt handle forward and down, that'll take the tension off of the striker. That's about all there is to it.
Well, I hope you found that interesting. I'm Jim Humphrey from Imminent Threat Defense Firearms Training. Remember, enjoy your firearms, join the NRA, and be safe out there. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.